me at night messing around, and just want to talk about some random topics as they come up. And I was wanting to maybe bring up the topic of layers, layers of life, and how one could, look into this like so many, like peeling so many skins and the layers of an onion. And so um, I have to wonder like how many of us are still dealing with the outermost layer, and like how much is that outermost layer a genuine part of you, as opposed to like something from your milieu or your environment. Take for example, you know like what you speak, how you speak, like your language. That's something that was put onto you. It's almost like a garment, or a layer of skin, and the the skin is new, pink, or is it old and gray and wrinkly? And this just kind of broadens my view of this whole thing from just a singular individual to like an entire generation, you know, because English today is not the same as old English, you know. Try reading like Shakespeare, you know. So, and how does that change your thinking, you know? Like there's ideas how, we can only think in our language, you know, and or you think in what symbols or images, and you can hear, some of us can hear in our imagination. And it's a very interesting thing because it seems like, when you look at life, how life starts from like the beginning of life. And I think like just because I had the realization that all life is one, so uh, I sometimes, shift from a particular point of view, like my own, to like an entire generation of human beings, my generation, to like the entire span of our species, and then I sometimes expand further out to like include the first replicating, DNA molecule, you know, and so like how these things, in our world hit us. I can even say bombard us. Nature bombards us. Like it bombarded the first atoms and molecules with explosions and stuff, right? And so you have to have destruction. Artists know this about life. Like you have to destroy in order to create. Like if anybody knows that, artists know that. Philosophers, come next. And then your world leaders, they know about that. Kissinger knew about that, and your physicists know about that. They talk about the second law of thermodynamics, and uh, so like when we're being hit by the harsh reality of life existence, and we're these soft, pliable, mushy things, um, that's going to affect our growth, and our development. And so we we wind up, creating a layer of skin. And so that's why I'm using the layers analogy of the onion layers. And so like like this is stuff that you acquire from just being bombarded by life itself. And then there's the cultural skin with the language and all that. Um, how much of that is forced on you, and how much of that is genuinely you? How do you, separate the two? You know, is it possible to separate you from your physical world, your physical self from your physical world? I once had this revelation that if I could wave my magic wand, or Houdini, Houdini, no, Cagliostro, wave your, Gandalf, wave your, Elisa Crowley, you wave your magic wand, and the environment disappears, like your world disappears. Now, what's interesting about that, are you saying just your local neighborhood, or are you saying the United States? Are you saying, the entire planet? I'd like to venture further and say the entire cosmos. So that's space and time. And so that's why I think that I had something there. Like, so if I were to, you know, wipe out my universe, space and time, I think I would disappear with it. And I think that just shows that, like, I mean, hey, like from my point of view, you're part of my environment, right? So, and from your point of view, I'm part of your environment. So it just stands to reason that, we're just a part of the environment, you know. So, look at it that way. So there's the paradox that shows up now. Now there's this paradox because with a concentrated, set of vibrations, that can, uh, I want to say replicate, but like, I mean, that's a given. But these vibrations I'm talking about are the self-referential ones, the ones that can look upon themselves and they can say, this am I. Uh, you and me, yeah, I mean, the Freudian motto would say you're talking about your ego. Okay, fine for now. But same would go for like an animal, like a cat or a bear, that they're experiencing something. So now, sure, we're going to experience it differently than these two examples, but I think I'm, straying off topic. So, um, that means like I'm one with the cosmos, right? Isn't that what that means? And so, yeah, you can just, end this like, oh, with a poetic gesture, like, oh yeah, the cosmos, you're just the cosmos trying to realize itself. You're a product of that. And I know we've heard that, and that's fine and good. And yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's it. Okay, good night. Um, but just sort of like, to fondle it for a little bit, I guess. So the paradox, like, so is the quandary, or like the, what have you, is that, you know there's a concentrated you that's able to experience itself, and that's part of the universal. It's like the universe has experienced itself. Yeah, we already been there, already done that. So what next? Okay, so you know science, they want to explain like how it happens, and so and I think that has to be done, which led us to the modern age, But I think that in a deeper sense, the why has to come back into the room, and because the why was always there for the greater part of our tenure on this planet as human beings, Homo sapiens or Homo sapien. So and so it's just like a most immediate recent phenomena to frame what we are all about, and to forget what we did 99% of the time previously, on Earth, as a species, and it just seems like I know I kind of you know like my train's going on a track, and I think there's another track that looks a lot like this track, and I think my train just sort of jumped on that track, and I think some of you got that. Good for you. You get a golden star. So, but needless to say, like we didn't always have this consciousness like the way we have it now, where we can, you know, think logically and be able to, define things with our mental, you know, uh, contraptions, and the compass and the ruler, you know, which is ironically the part of the instruments that you see in the Freemason logo, and that's very important there, because like, so these guys, you know, we'll never know exactly what they do. All these people, even the people who are in the Freemason, I can't help but think that they're just plants. Yeah, from the beginning. You don't know. I mean, you can't trust anything, let alone the Freemasons, you know. And even though Washington was one, I always thought that when something, I mean, he made a spectacle of it, and like, you had the cornerstone in Washington, D.C., and that there's a lot of that Freemason stuff all over there, and even William Blake played with it. He has, and that was his portrait of Newton, and he, this new dude, long hair, and he had a divider, like that. I should just start showing books. I'm so old school. Um, but yeah, I might do that. I can't pause this and go and get it. I'll kill the live stream. Man, no one's even watching this right now. Oh well, I don't care. I'm gonna still do it. For all I know, maybe no one could see it. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. The first time I had people looking, but now I don't have anybody looking in. Oh well. But so yeah, I can get books and stuff on here. Um, so the the idea about these layers, there you go, got back to the onion. Like we I get, are we the most outer layer of the universe? Then are we the most outer layer? Are we the most inner layer? How can we gauge or measure that, or even define it? Define that. We're like Jacques Cousteau's, you know, swimming in the deep, you know, probing the dark depths of our, you know, souls, and I think that's what like artists do. They're like the real Jacques Cousteau's that go deep inward. They search for something, and they have to go into the darkness, and that refers to, like in alchemy, the dark night of the soul, the Negretto, and so that's where you face the the darkness that's inside of you, you know. And the problem is that the definition is evil, and the word evil has always taken on a different kind of ring or connotation since Christianity, although the intent of evil has always been there, right? So you can't say Christianity invented that, but they misconstrued a lot of things as evil when these things are just processes of nature. You know, it's probably like a Japanese proverb, an old one. You know that says something like, "The processes of nature can never be evil." And so we bring in our set of morals and we say, this part of nature is evil and this part of nature is good. And I think we're doing that. And so I've used the word amoral before. So nature is amoral. Immoral, again, presupposes that you have something look at what we define as good, and then we reject it. And so now we're, raping and pillaging. That would be immoral. But amoral is, no, I'm not even considering you or your set of conditions. So in that sense, I'm amoral. I am the volcano, you know? Get it? I am the volcano. Do you understand? Do you dig? I'm Billy the Mountain. I'm the fucking volcano, you know? What do I care about your laws and your conditions and your statutes and your thou shalt and thou shalt nots and your perfume or cologne. What? Don't care about any of that because I'm the volcano. And so the volcano, a la nature, is not immoral, it's just amoral. So the idea about good versus evil has to come into play when we have the language for it. And so we with so many chisels and hammers, say, we sort of like do that to our environment, and then say, okay, this little thing that we made is that's considered to be what defines evil, and this one over here considers what to be defining as good. It's kind of like still you're chained to a lack of free will. You're chained to a reactionary state of mind because you're kind of like a self automated like toy on the table, and so this thing is like, and it goes to the edge of the table, then it stops and it turns around, and it doesn't know why, it just does it, because it just doesn't feel right. And so some of you are probably familiar with the philosophical zombie paradox. And so like you can have somebody before you, let's say they're like a Blade Runner, like replicant, and God, they respond to you, and they respond to life itself. They ponder things, and they cry, they laugh, they yearn, they fear, they hate, they comprehend, and so they emote. And it's like, okay, well, that means these guys are real. They're like conscious like we are, or are they just programmed that way to the point where you're just, it's so, the timing is just right, and their responses are so pristine and so good that you think it's like, that's what a philosophical zombie is. And I learned about that, and I just loved playing with it. And then one day, as I was batting around that idea, it came back to me where, maybe I'm a philosophical zombie. So let that, turn, inside there for you, What if you're a philosophical zombie? What if I'm a philosophical zombie? I fool myself into believing in my responses, and if though, like, my whole world's just like a medium, like a film made by a film camera, you know, that I can't see, you know, or I'm better yet, like it is the camera and it's filming itself, it still becomes like the medium. And so if that's the message, and Marshall McLuhan, you know, the medium becomes the message, then that thing is gonna get you to behave accordingly. And so with with the medium as a message, if it's like a television, a lot of things just the way I always have like a warped sense of understanding things, especially philosophical things. And I think I'm right, but I have a weird, you know, flavor that I throw on it. And so like the medium is a message for me, and I'm trying to apply this to our reality, and that we are like characters in this, you know, film, you know, that kind of thing. The medium is a message in the classical sense from the Canadian writer. Uh, I took as something to mean that, like with TV, it's a format, right? And so you have to fit into that format for it to work. And so like if I'm doing something over here, you can't see what I'm doing, you know, and that's a very, you know, black and white example, very concrete example. But then there's a lot of more subtle ones, because of the milieu, because of the state of things, and what we collectively know in society, what our collective social network, you know, is gonna know about certain things. There's a scope, you know, a spectrum of things, but like anyways, I don't think there's any but after that sentence. So we're prone to have to pick from out of that collection of stuff. And I mean, that alone is like, well, you didn't make it, you're picking it. Boy, I wonder if I'm making any sense. Be that as it may, I will continue. With the medium being the message, you are being also fit into this box that, because of our social networking and how that's attached to a limited, you know, set of you know, data points, you're, how can I put this? You're raving mad. That's it. You're raving mad. You're a lunatic. The world is mad. The universe is insane. It shat itself into being. So you fit the container that you're put in. And so now think of water. So water assumes the shape of the container. And so that's the medium, is the message. Aha, I got it. So we you know, we fit into this container, which is, you know, in this case, like, you know, like for like, I was gonna say newspaper, but or magazine, but I'm gonna say like television. I mean, literally, like when you're looking at me in the screen, I'm actually made of the stuff that the television emits in the form of photons, just, you know, coming at you, and very synchronized photons of different tones and colors, and visual stimulation, and also you can hear, and they correlate. What you hear and what you see are correlated, you know, quite perfect to the T. So the illusion is a really convincing one, you know, and we're all involved. We're all hallucinating this together. Um, and so it still stands to reason to question the layer that we define our everyday, existence as. And so like I made political videos, like, you know and I was talking about how there's this polarization coming on, to where it's where you're not really interested in like a particular um uh bill made into law, or a particular issue, like could be something economical, like raising the minimum wage, or preserving, some public land, national forest. You might be like abortion, like the right to, freedom of choice. Is that it? Right to choose, freedom of choice. So like you might be instead of that, just, well, because it's polarization of, you like bipartisan, but this is like the polarization partisan, you know, uh, and so it's becoming really hyper, and so you're like not thinking about the stuff that you like, you're just thinking about what you don't like, and so no matter what, this guy can't get into office. The enemy, the perceived threat, and that how far, I mean, you could say, yeah, but there's a connection, because I'm trying to preserve, bear's ears, and I know that some of you are thinking that way, and these are the better thinkers. These are the more, like, I would say you're more of a progressive, better thinker, and it's like, yeah, because, and I've harped on that, like the most important thing is nature, like the earth, this is our home. This is it. There's no second earth, and so that's now, I would say that alone is why politics could be so personal, and that I think is stronger than like social identity, you know. So if you could say I'm a Democrat because it leads down that primrose path, that might be better than just somebody saying that I'm gay or I'm straight, because that just stops right at you. That doesn't, do anything for like the benefit of the natural world. I think, and this is important. It still deals with the original part of this video about the layers, and how I know that there are so many layers to us. In one way or other, we are made of, I don't know how many layers. Could it be like 10, 20, 100 Googleplex? I don't know. And so, and Freud, he talked about the ego, and the id and that, and he also talked about the conscious and the unconscious. And so there's things that are present inside of you, but you don't see it in the surface. Those are repressed things that you've had because of some kind of traumatic experience when you were young. Which brings me to me. I mentioned one of my videos, like I was trying to get, I was personal. I was really personal, and I said something about I might have had a traumatic experience when I was really little, and it was like really nasty, like what I was assuming that it might have been. But then I realized, what if I was in utero and that traumatic thing happened to my mom? I'm born. So like Sigmund Freud's wrong, to him it's like, back then it's like, the baby is a clean slate. There's nothing there. It's like, wrong, bucko. Dead wrong. The somatic experience of your environment, that you're in utero in your mother's womb, man, and she's experiencing some kind of traumatic thing. It's gonna carry over to you, and transfer over to you. And I think that's. Then here's the thing, like, I never made a lot of money in my life, but I made the chance for myself to think along these terms. I said I'm gonna fight for my time. so I can think these thoughts. I can read the books. It's fun. I used to go to the libraries a lot, like the school libraries. These things are huge. You go underground. It's these weird, path, passage, corridors to these different, room of books. And I miss that. It's like, so you just like, you know, um, and the medium is the message. Now the content that we might be spewing out is different because we get all our information from the internet, you know. And so my train went from the second track now to a third one just now. Did you get some of you got that right? Duh. Right. Yeah. That's why I want to do this stuff. I think it's fun. I hope I do a lot of these. I might not. It's kind of like I'm doing this now. I'm doing this for me more than anything. In the end, that's just the way it is. But hopefully, someone can get something out of it. And so, about the layers, about what we think we are about, when really that's just a facade. Oh, there, I said it. So what, and I also mentioned a philosophical zombie, and so it's like we think that we're conscious. What if we think that we're conscious, and we think that we're feeling these things? Isn't it the same as actually feeling it? Because if you pinch me, I'm gonna go, ow. Is it the same thing? I mean, really think that we're just programmed this way. How are we able to, discern? And sure, that's why people are really looking into it. We're looking into it. We'll get back to you on that. Just don't be so long. But I really think that's like the goal. That's the role of the artist. The artist sort of has to like it's the inner astronaut, the inner reaches of outer space or the outer reaches of inner space. So you have the inner reaches of outer space. That's what Joseph Campbell, And then how about the outer reaches? I'm interested in the outer reaches of inner space. And I'm not just trying to be cute. I read his book and I said it in reverse hook because I'm really cool. No, seriously, the outer reaches of inner space is what real artists are exploring. And I think that's how you get to the second layer or the third layer, inward, And I think that's what it is. And I think that's why we need art. We need to really just, there's no inner probing going on. That sounds kind of disgusting, It's like, get that thing out of my butt, man. That's not what I meant. The cable guy. Yeah, what are you doing? It's not what I meant. Or the cable guy would be doing the probing. It's like, what are you doing? Yeah, Mr. Magoo. Okay. So you're the artist has to be the one to do the depth work, and you pull things out from the depth and you expose in the light of day, and it could be jarring, it could be disgusting, and so like and I think that there are some like I want to start talking about certain painters, and so yeah, there's H.R. Giger. He obviously is like some kind of conduit for what we're talking about, and he's looking inward, and so he's doing the shadow work where he's exposing the darkness in himself, because it's just sort of like an automatic pilot when he's painting with the airbrush, and just sort of like materializes. That's the story. And but I think that a lot of artists have been doing this if it's not with the airbrush, and I've done it too. And um, I think that you could do it very photorealistically, very illustratively, or you could do it like very non-representationally. And it's harder to appreciate the non-representational because there's nothing to latch onto. You can't, you know. But the idea is between abstract and representational is like, how much more can you feel the illusion of an egg than the um, the tones that are required to make the egg. And so now you're just looking at the tone, the lights versus the darks, and the gradient between the light and dark areas of said shape of the egg. And you're just looking at it for those forms, as opposed to what it symbolizes, which is, you know, you know. And I what I want to do is, instead of rejecting one for the other, I want to marry them to where they're one and the same. Because like what the egg represents is deep, you know, and yet it's also comical. You can throw eggs at somebody for comical effect, and it's used in our you know more descriptive tongue, like, oh, that stinks like rotten eggs, and go suck an egg, because that's so gross, sucking a raw egg. And of course, that's like the more cute, but the more profound is that this perfected shape that comes out of a chicken's ass. Okay, but um, there's something about the shape, and for someone like me, I'm like, yeah, that's the shape of the universe. It's the shape of the womb. I could wrap my mind all around that kind of stuff, that imagery. So I can take the egg pretty seriously. Um, Dali made use of the egg in some of his paintings, and Dali and this guy, they were friends. I mean, there's pictures of them sitting together out on the porch. So, in any event, so a symbol of creation, and there's something reptilian about eggs, because like birds come from reptiles, and reptiles are cold blooded, and then you look at snakes, and then how snakes are treated in our literature, and they're like these cold blooded things, and I'm like, yeah, they're amoral, just like nature herself, and they shed their skin, and so that's like, but they continue to exist, and so that's how life is. Life sheds us as skin, but life still exists. Now it gets more interesting when you say consciousness is all one, and we are these skins of the same consciousness, and eventually we get old and we die, if we're lucky. Um, and but we, in a sense, we still live on if all consciousness is one. You see that? So this is the kind of stuff I wanted to get into. But I know originally I wanted to talk about something else, but then I got into this whole thing about the layers, and how how much on the surface are we looking at things, and like the artist could be the one to go further deep. Now I know physicists and science does that too, and like I know math does that too. They do in these different parts, and so y- I would say I would include all of it in the stew, you know. And but it doesn't mean that when you paint you have to use direct math, and yet when you're painting you might create something that fits you know the whole Fibonacci box, and so it's like, yeah, the golden rectangle, and all that stuff, and say that that happens subconsciously, the golden ratio type thing, and so that's where you're actually using math, and I would say that you don't subconsciously, unconsciously, and I would say that's the whole thing about art, is like I think that the ideas have to like just kind of come from nowhere, and now you could also do that with responding to external stimuli, and then you resonate with this, but you don't resonate with that. So you kind of like deal with the stuff that you resonate with, and then that brings the idea on about vibrations, and so if we're in this medium, and that's the message, it's like we're forced into this vessel to conform to the shape of the vessel, like to use water as an analogy. The only thing we're left with is if it feels right, and I mentioned like the only freedom we have is what's going on between our ears, uh, but like this other thing to add on to that or replace that with maybe for today is if something resonates. I think this is where it's going to get interesting. Where I was talking about the first layer, and then you have like a second layer. The artist can go in, but music can do that too. Philosophy can do that, and literature can do that. But also your personal experiences can do that, where it kind of resonates. And so it's sort of like the seismic kind of like vibration happens on on this layer because of what you're beholding. But then it can go deep inside of you, and so like it goes all the way to your center, and then something is released, and then that's when you're like, whoa. Um, that's when you have an enlightenment episode or like an epiphany, and I think I've had paintings do that to me, and and music has done that to me, but then also my own thoughts have done that to me, my own experiences have done that to me, and I don't think there's any other way to do it but that way to get that resonating experience. When you can see that kind of a thing in everyday life, like with experiencing something with your family or your friends, and also you're interacting with something in your immediate environment, like, and you receive it in a way that's similar to an amazing work of art that resonates with you, and so it goes deep inside of you because a seismic vibration is gonna you know enliven, awaken a bunch of layers that's inside of you, and that might be the only thing we got. And you could have that you could be out in nature and you don't even speak anything, and the question is, could you have that experience? I would say if you have the hardware, you can, and so we got the hardware. We're all born with it, and so I would say you can. uh, and there's probably a duality type of argument because with this, like, one is that you don't have like the logical faculties that we have, that's given to us with our language and our history going back to the Greeks and even before the Greeks, and um, leading into like the scientific revolution and all that. And you don't have that, but you're living out there like a pharaoh type of person. I don't know what's going on in your head, and so that would be very interesting to be able to like somehow have you or me can experience. I could experience what's going on in that you know person's head, the pharaoh adult's head. If, I know there was feral children. There was like stories of feral children, but feral adults. I think there was a couple, and so what I don't know. I could also say that, yeah, but it's something you have to work at. You have to work at it, and so well, I don't know how far I can go into this and back that up, but the goal would be that something outside your first layer resonates to something like the second layer, going within, going within, going within, and um and so like whatever that is, like, I would think that you can get that. I would have to say that maybe you can get that more out in nature than in our environment. And art is probably just a liaison between us and nature. It's like or it's just a passageway, or it's like a reflection of nature, but not necessarily just in representational sense, but in the more pure sense. And because with nature, um, man, it's like if you really just let yourself go and you're surrounded by a lot of nature, it becomes like there's a depth there, and so it becomes like an LSD experience, a trip, or a mushroom experience. And I think that's where I'm getting at. When you have these trance-like states, these kind of transcendental moments, it can be aided by some kind of hallucinogen, or or fasting. Um, you know, some of us, our ancestors, like maybe they experienced these profound experiences because it was forced on them, because they just didn't have anything to eat, and some of them got that experience. And then it's like, hey, well, why don't we just sort of like force that? You know, we'll make that a practice. We'll just self-induce that and get the same. We'll get to replicate the experience that we got, that we wound up getting at first, getting accidentally. And so that could be why there's fasting in these kind of aesthetic religions. You know, the aesthete, the fakirs, the monks, and apart from like sitting still, meditating, and there's other things. And then you have the people inducing hallucinogens and that. Uh, then there's the people who practice meditation, where you're really using imagery, thought pattern, thought imagery, and you're also like, um, it's like you're trying to channel, and it's also like you're trying to create a frequency. It's an invisible and inaudible frequency, and then that can, like, if it's the same frequency of something bigger than you, then you kind of unknowingly, harness that. And so, um, if we're wave particles, it's like we are a type of, and we're moving through time. It makes us like it is like we're like a particle, but then we're a wave because we're moving through time. And I think that's the whole thing about wave particle, is that because molecules exist in time, atoms exist in time. So that's why, I think that's why you have the wave particle, you know, paradox, or duality principle, because we right now we're zipping through time. We're actually moving, you know, and so space is moving through time, you know, and so um, it's so in that sense we're like an event. We're something that's happening through time, in time, and so that's where it's like a wave, you know, like if you could see you yourself, or I could see you 20 minutes ago, you know, you're, and go further back, like since the day you were born, you'd be like a, a worm, you know. You know what I mean? We'd be like, it's all one continual thing. And that's totally Kurt Vonnegut. And so like that's the whole thing. It's like, you know, who are we? What are we? And I can't help but think that we need at least some of us to think like this, you know, because we're not going to get further than this, the outer layer. And I think that because of that, if too many people are just stuck in the outer layer, there's a closer chance that our leader, you know, will be inclined to press the button. And because of this action chain reaction kind of occurrence, you know, and so we have to go inward. So like, I want to get into that in some of my videos. I want to get into that. I mean, I do that with my life, you know, with what I do, and I need to do it more. But I try to paint all the time, and so that's my way of doing it. And even with my art, I feel like I still feel like, man, I can go in it further, and it's like because you know, I use representational imagery a lot, and that could be the thing that's really, you know, confining me. And so it's always good for an artist to like question and push, you know, to the outer limit, Like, okay, I'm doing this, but what if I did this? Um, and I've done it, but I might have to consider it more. Anyways, so like, where am I going with this? It's almost like 50 minutes, 5016, 50, 17, 15, 18, 19, 20, 21. I am going to wrap it up. I just wanted to get into this idea about, originally I was thinking about God before I get into the whole layer thing. And I think I kind of got into that to a certain extent. But like this whole thing about our concept of God, I've been really always throwing bad eggs on at it, and so like, I'm trying to really refine my assessment of that subject, and I think I'm getting it. I'm getting it down, and so I want to lay it on you before I close this. I think that Orthodox religion, like your I'm going to say your monotheistic ones, have hijacked the deeper truth about God. And I think that's what it is. And so I mentioned the monad, which is a Gnostic God, monad slash pleroma. But the thing is, these are just words, right? And so I try to say it's amoral, and I've said it before. It's an imponderable. So the imponderable, that's what we are the ponderables, and we are originated from an imponderable thing, which is not a thing. It's just that's the problem with clumsy language. And so this thing about God, and I don't. It could be so like, in so many words, very sophomoric. Oh, you're gonna talk about God? Give me a break. But considering what's going on at large, I think it's rather appropriate. And so I'll continue before I close. So like, I think that the gods that we are so familiar with, like, the Abrahamic one, and to be specific, has hijacked the higher notions of God. And I think it's probably the problem is the word it's so is the name itself um, responsible, like the medium is the message. So like that word is defining what God has become. So you have to find a different word or maybe no word. And that's where I'm going to first go to kind of go deeper and deeper and deeper. So like you have like your parochial provincial names like Jesus, Allah, Krishna, you know, um, Yahweh. But then you have your more esoteric references like tetragrammaton, and then like your Sanskrit, no tongue has spoiled it, So you have like you can't name it, you can't utter it. So it's not so provincial anymore. But that's still like not deep enough. So to get deeper, that what I'm trying to talk about, the essence of God, would be that was hijacked and basically smothered by, like, say, Christianity and Islam and what have you. For the immediate student, I would say, yeah, you have to go into your Eastern traditions, and then now you're getting into a third layer deeper about God. So now you're like, because these traditions realize that this world is an illusion. So if this is just an illusion, you have to penetrate that and get beneath the surface. And there's some circles of Buddhism that say that there's nothing inside of you. It's just all empty. This is all emptiness. And that's synonymous with being like an illusion. So it's almost like semantics, almost. Like, yeah, it's pretty much the same thing, right? Nothingness is illusion. Illusion is nothingness because there's nothing there. It's an illusion. So like, and I've said it before, like everything came from nothing. I've said that. I've came across. That hit me a while ago, like kind of like a revelation. And like I don't know how much this could serve you in your everyday life, but maybe in the long run it'll probably be a benefit because you're at least keeping yourself in check. You're sharpening your sword of reason when you're thinking like this because you get these people knocking on your door and then the next day now you're like doing that yourself. You know, Eh, you know, you don't want to do that. You're real fucked up if you do. It's just a waste of time. I've tried it. It's like okay, you have to go through that to get out of it. You know, you have to put your finger in the candle out and get out of it. It's just like ugh. Or like you're like a little toy car going like and then okay, this is the cliff and you go like that. And I mean that like symbolically more than anything. There's nothing there. There really is nothing there because you're you're not going to get the right experience. You're not going to get the depth reverberating from this layer all the way to the core of yourself. There's how many layers, to this onion of your self, your being, and it's almost like a philosophical zombie. It's programmed you to think that you are, but it's just a program, and you fool yourself into believing that. And because you have this model to attach yourself to, and it tells you what you want, you don't even know what you want. And I think that's the thing, when you look into yourself, you could probably find out more about what you want, and that's probably what it is. But hopefully the want is beyond just I want to make love to you. I mean that can only go so far, and I really mean that. I mean I think that love has been sold to us, and so we're pursuing that by lining up their coffers, their wallets, and we pursue that, and so we'll be glad to work these shitty jobs, and we're doing these shitty jobs because we're working towards a future with the one we love, and it's it's pretty much out the door, and because you're bouncing yourself between you and them, just but it's always within this like bubble, and this bubble is defined by like your your tradition, including like you have to work for a living, and it sounds like I'm a lazy lob for saying that. Well, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with work, so I think that you have to be active or else you'll go mad, and so enter work. I get it. It's very academic. It's very sophomoric. To even question that, or even bring it up, it's like, nah, I'm not going there. So, it's a waste of our time. So, it's. I think there's genuine work versus all the bullshit jobs that we have to do. We have to do a lot of. I mean, think about it. Like the stuff that you're doing, and you ask yourself, why am I doing this? Why did I, take this major up? And why am I into this? Why am I going for that party? What am I doing? What I am doing? Why am I wearing this stupid 10-gallon, Trump hat? What the fuck is the matter with you? What the fuck's the matter with me? What is all this, anyways? The hell is going on? So, I could continue, but I think that I'm running out of batteries. So, literally, my phone is. So, I'm going to end it here. And, much more to ponder on a later date. Thank you.